For over 2 decades, The Benny Hill Show was one of the most popular comedy programs in the world. It wasn't just a hit in Britain, it was a global sensation. From the United States to Australia, millions tuned in every week to watch Benny Hill's mischievous grin, his slapstick chases, and that unforgettable Yakety sax theme. But few could have imagined that one of television's most beloved comedians would one day become one of its most controversial figures, and that a single scene, aired near the end of the show's run, would mark the beginning of the end. So, what really happened? And how did Benny Hill go from being the face of British comedy to a man rejected by the very audience that once adored him? Let's rewind. In the early 70s, Benny Hill was untouchable. His comedy sketches were fast, cheeky, and often risque, a mix of silent film slapstick and British humor. The formula was simple: short, punchy sketches filled with visual gags, mistaken identities, and Benny's classic naughty old man persona. It was harmless fun. At least, that's what audiences thought at the time. Men would laugh. Women too. Kids would imitate the chase scenes. And in homes across the world, The Benny Hill Show became family entertainment. It didn't matter if the jokes were silly or repetitive, Benny had mastered the art of making people laugh without needing to say much at all. But by the early 80s, times were changing. The world was becoming more sensitive to issues of gender, race, and representation. Television networks began re-evaluating what kind of humor was acceptable. And Benny Hill's sketches, which often featured him chasing women in skimpy outfits or turning female characters into punchlines, started to feel out of step with the times. Still, Benny kept doing what had always worked. His 1985 episode, however, would become infamous, not because it broke new ground, but because it showed how out of touch the show had become. In that particular episode, Hill played an elderly man visiting a beauty salon. The scene began with the usual humor, exaggerated expressions, quick camera cuts, and his typical innuendo. But halfway through the sketch, the humor crossed a line for many viewers. As Benny's character ogled and chased the women around the salon, the sequence became longer, louder, and far more suggestive than usual. At one point, the scene ended with Benny being slapped repeatedly by multiple women, the camera zooming in on their short skirts as they ran in circles around him. When the episode aired, some viewers laughed as they always had. But for many others, it felt awkward, even offensive. Critics said it wasn't funny anymore, it was just uncomfortable to watch. That sketch would later be called the scene that took the Benny Hill Show off the air for good. It wasn't the only reason, but it was the turning point. After that broadcast, complaints began to pour in. Letters to Thames Television accused Benny Hill of sexism, of mocking women, and of clinging to a brand of humor that had no place in modern Britain. Magazines and newspapers joined in. The once beloved cheeky Benny was suddenly labeled outdated, sexist, and sad. Even within the network, executives were starting to worry. Ratings were slipping, and the show was becoming more expensive to produce. The audience that once loved him was growing tired, and younger viewers weren't tuning in at all. Then came 1989, the year everything fell apart. Thames Television, the company that had produced The Benny Hill Show for nearly 2 decades, decided not to renew his contract. There was no farewell episode. No big announcement. No thank you special for one of Britain's biggest stars. Just silence. When Benny Hill received the news, it broke him. He'd devoted his entire life to making people laugh. He didn't drink, didn't party, and never married. Comedy was his world. And in one short meeting, that world ended. Behind the laughter, Benny Hill had always been a lonely man. He lived alone in a modest flat in West London, despite having earned millions over his career. He spent most of his evenings watching television or dining by himself. Friends said he was shy, even awkward around people, especially women. When The Benny Hill Show was cancelled, he tried to brush it off in public, telling reporters he understood that times had changed. But privately, he was devastated. The infamous scene had turned him into a symbol of a kind of comedy that Britain wanted to forget. And even though it was never his intention to offend anyone, Benny became the scapegoat for an entire era of humor that was now seen as politically incorrect. The irony was cruel. The man who once brought joy to millions was now treated like a relic of a past best left behind. In the early 90s, Benny tried to stage a comeback. European broadcasters still adored him, and reruns of The Benny Hill Show were a hit in over 100 countries. But in Britain, doors remained closed. TV executives saw him as too controversial. Feminist critics called him the dirty old man of comedy. Even his health began to decline. Years of stress and loneliness took their toll. He gained weight, developed heart problems, and stopped appearing in public. By 1991, Benny Hill was no longer the face of British laughter. He was a forgotten star living in isolation, haunted by the memory of a single scene that had destroyed everything he'd built. That moment in the beauty salon sketch, the exaggerated chases, the awkward laughter, the outdated humor, had become more than just a TV gag. It was a symbol of a turning point in entertainment itself. Television was moving forward, embracing new kinds of comedy, smarter, more inclusive, more modern. Shows like Blackadder and Only Fools and Horses represented the new face of British humor. And Benny Hill, once the king of comedy, had been quietly dethroned. But was it fair? Some say no. Benny's defenders argue that his comedy was never meant to harm anyone. It was a product of its time, rooted in innocence and absurdity. His sketches were wordless for a reason. They were universal. You didn't need to speak English to laugh at Benny Hill running from a gang of angry women while tripping over a bucket. Others say it was simply time to move on. Society had changed, and Benny refused to change with it. Whatever the truth, one thing is certain. That single episode marked the beginning of the end. And for Benny Hill, there would be no happy ending. But what happened next was even sadder. Because when the laughter stopped, Benny Hill vanished from the spotlight altogether. He would spend his final years in solitude, watching reruns of his own show, and wondering where it all went wrong. And when news of his death finally broke, the world realized just how much they'd taken him for granted. When The Benny Hill Show went off the air, it wasn't just a TV show that ended, it was an entire era. For over 20 years, Benny Hill had been a Saturday night ritual. Families would gather around their sets, waiting for that familiar saxophone tune and those fast-motion chase scenes. But after the final broadcast, the laughter that once echoed in millions of homes was gone, replaced by silence. And for Benny Hill, that silence was deafening. After Thames Television dropped him in 1989, Benny's career came to a sudden halt. There were no new shows, no farewell specials, and no major interviews. Just one quiet phone call that changed everything. He didn't know it at the time, but that moment marked the beginning of a painful decline, one that would lead to one of the most tragic endings in entertainment history. For years, Benny had lived modestly. Despite earning millions over his career, he avoided luxury. He never bought a big house, a flashy car, or fancy clothes. Instead, he lived in a small apartment in Teddington, southwest London, just a few miles from the very studios where he once made the nation laugh. It was simple, almost bare. A small kitchen. A bedroom filled with old scripts, videotapes, and fan letters. To Benny, that was enough. But once the Benny Hill Show was gone, that apartment became his entire world. The truth is, Benny Hill didn't have many friends. He was polite, kind, and humble, but also painfully shy. He never married, never had children, and rarely invited anyone over. Even those who worked closely with him said they didn't really know him. Actor Henry McGee, who appeared in countless sketches alongside him, once said, "Benny lived for his show. Once the cameras stopped, he disappeared." And disappear he did. In the early 1990s, the public had moved on. British comedy was entering a new age, more verbal, more political, more self-aware. Benny's brand of slapstick humor was now seen as old-fashioned. But in other countries, he was still a superstar. France, Italy, and even Russia continued to broadcast reruns of The Benny Hill Show on prime time. In America, stations like PBS kept airing his old episodes, and ratings stayed high. So while Britain turned away, the rest of the world refused to let go. There were signs that Benny wanted to come back, just one more show, one more laugh. In 1991, he began meeting with producer Dennis Kirkland to discuss a possible comeback special. He was also approached by television companies in the Netherlands and Germany who wanted to fund new material. But Benny wasn't in the best shape. Years of loneliness and stress had caught up to him. He had gained significant weight and was suffering from heart problems, though he rarely talked about them. He joked about getting old but ignored the pain. He told friends he would rest later. Sadly, later would never come. On April 20th, 1992, a few days after neighbors noticed his curtains hadn't been drawn, police broke into Benny Hill's apartment. They found him slumped in an armchair, in front of the television, surrounded by stacks of unopened fan mail. He had died alone. The cause was heart failure. He was 68 years old. News of his death shocked the world. Within hours, tributes poured in from across the globe. Comedians, actors, and fans expressed sadness and disbelief. Even those who had criticized him admitted that his influence was undeniable. In France, newspapers called him a comic genius. In America, talk show hosts replayed old clips and spoke about how the Benny Hill Show inspired generations of sketch comedy. But in Britain, the reaction was more complicated. Some media outlets remembered him as a relic of a bygone era, while others accused the entertainment industry of abandoning him too soon. Producer Dennis Kirkland later said that Benny's firing from Thames Television killed him. "He didn't deserve to go out that way," Kirkland said. "He gave his whole life to laughter and died without anyone beside him." And yet, in a bittersweet twist, Benny Hill became more popular than ever after his death. TV stations across the world began re-airing The Benny Hill Show, and for the first time in years, British audiences started watching again, not to mock him, but to remember what made him so special. People realized that, underneath the chase scenes and the slapstick, Benny Hill was an artist. He wrote nearly all of his material himself. He performed, edited, and sometimes even directed his sketches. His comedy wasn't crude for the sake of it. It was crafted to make people laugh without needing a single word of dialogue. And that's something few comedians can do. Still, the shadow of that infamous scene, the one that many say ended the show, never truly disappeared. In the years following his death, The Benny Hill Show was often revisited in documentaries and debates about changing social values. Some argued that the program should have evolved with the times, while others insisted it shouldn't have had to. But one thing became clear. Benny Hill's comedy, while imperfect, captured something universal: the joy of laughter, the chaos of human nature, and the innocence of making fun of oneself. That was his gift. And that's what people forgot until it was too late. Many of the performers who worked alongside Benny went on to lead quiet lives after the show ended. For them, The Benny Hill Show had been the highlight of their careers. Henry McGee, Benny's straight-faced sidekick, continued acting in British television until his death in 2006. Bob Todd, known for his exaggerated facial expressions and slow, bumbling humor, passed away in 1992, just weeks before Benny himself. Jackie Wright, the tiny Irishman who was always getting slapped on the head, became one of the show's most iconic faces. He retired from acting in the late 1970s and died in 1989. Then there were the Hills Angels, the group of dancers who brought glamour and rhythm to the show's sketches in its later years. Some of them continued working in entertainment, while others left the industry entirely. Over time, many have spoken warmly about Benny, describing him as kind, respectful, and surprisingly shy behind the camera. And finally, Dennis Kirkland, Benny's longtime producer and closest collaborator, spent the rest of his career defending Benny's legacy. He directed several posthumous specials celebrating The Benny Hill Show and wrote a book titled Benny, The True Story. He passed away in 2006. Today, more than 3 decades later, The Benny Hill Show still sparks debate. Was it outdated? Maybe. Was it offensive? To some, yes. But was it funny? Undeniably, to millions around the world. Even now, reruns of the show continue to attract viewers on streaming platforms and classic TV channels. The humor may belong to another time, but the laughter it created never really faded. And perhaps that's the most poetic ending of all. Because in the end, Benny Hill didn't die forgotten, he died misunderstood. And like so many artists before him, his work was only fully appreciated when he was gone. As we look back on that infamous scene, the one that supposedly ended it all, it's clear that it was never just about a single sketch. It was about change. About how entertainment evolves, how audiences grow, and how even the biggest stars can be left behind by time. But it's also about the power of laughter, the one thing that never truly goes out of style. And for Benny Hill, that was enough. Even after the lights dimmed and the laughter stopped echoing through the studio, his spirit, the mischievous smile, the playful chases, the innocent absurdity, never really left us. Because somewhere, right now, another audience is laughing at that familiar tune. And Benny Hill, the man who made the world smile, lives on once more.